Hey everybody, what is up? Let me get framed up properly here. How we doing? It is Thursday afternoon, and y'all know what that means. It is time for the Monster Workshop stream. Let me know if you can see me and hear me okay. Everything should be good. I should be all set up here. Lights and camera and everything. What's going on, folks? Talk to me. How's life? What's happening? I'm doing pretty well. I was a little better today, productivity-wise. I'm feeling good. I'm excited to tear into this. I spent a lot of time yesterday working on our last monster, the Cyclops, and that is pretty close to being done. I'm ready to drop that on our Patreon. But hopefully this monster won't be as intensive, but I'm actually thinking that it might be because there's a lot that we talked about on this episode. If you've never tuned in before, this is the Monster Workshop stream where we pick a monster from the Monster Manual and we talk about what doesn't work, and we kind of workshop it to make it a little bit more of an interesting monster to run in combat. As you can see, this is a sort of in partnership with a podcast that I do currently on hiatus called Monster of the Week, where we kind of do a similar thing, but it's a short 15-minute podcast. We also look at the history of the monster and the sort of positive things. This is kind of a response to that podcast where we break down those problems and try to come up with solutions and then implement those solutions into a new stat block, which you can then download on our Patreon, which gets posted roughly once a week to the Patreon. This week we are talking about the Pegasus, which is a monster that my wife, our Valentine's Day guest, chose almost a month ago now, or over a month ago now. And it's a very important monster mythologically, especially in Greek mythology. But 5th edition really gives this monster the short end of the stick. There is not a lot going on in this stat block, and that is kind of what we're going to talk about today and ways we could improve the Pegasus. So yeah, I am all set. I've got my monster manual here. I've got my water. I've got everything ready to go. Let's not waste any time. Let's tuck right in and talk about this monster. So the Pegasus, it is a CR2 large celestial. It is chaotic good. It's got 12 armor class, about 60 hit points. It's got a 60-foot move speed, so a little faster than your average horse, and a 90-foot fly speed, so it's super, super, super fast. Great ability scores, strong, good strength, decent dex, good con. It's got 10 intelligence, which is a point we talk about a lot on the podcast, 15 wisdom, 13 charisma. It's got great saving throws as well. We're talking about a +4 to dex, a +4 to wisdom, and a +3 to charisma. It's got +6 to its perception. It's got, it understands Celestial, Common, and Elvish, and Sylvan, but it can't speak. So it's 4 languages. Feels a little overkill to me, but we'll get into it. And then it's a CR2. I think largely owing to its speed, its saving throws, and its hit points. But the real kicker of the Pegasus is its actions. It's got a Hooves attack, +6 to hit, 5-foot reach, 2d6 +4 bludgeoning damage. That's the entire monster, folks. That's all it can do. It has one attack, not even multi-attack, just one attack that deals 2d6 +4 damage. Now, we talk about this a little bit on the podcast. We actually talk about this quite a bit, my wife and I. But this is obviously, I think, maybe one of the worst designed monsters that we've done on the show so far. Like most other monsters that have this few number of options, right? They are very, very low CR. We're talking like a CR, like 1/8 or something like that. You know what I mean? We're talking about like so low CR that it kind of makes sense that they have absolute garbage for abilities and powers, right? But there's no reason that a CR2 monster like this should be as boring as it actually is, if you know what I mean. Like, there's nothing going on here. So my first problem with it is the Pegasus has literally no powers or abilities. It's nothing. It's just got the hoof attack. There are powers that most of, like, the horses in Dungeons & Dragons have that the Pegasus just does not have. And so I'm going to even just pull up the riding horse. Well, the riding horse, okay, that's a better example. That just has the hooves. But what about a war horse? A war horse, a CR 1/2, has the trampling charge ability. If the horse moves at least 20 feet straight towards a creature and then hits it with a hooves attack on the same turn, the target must succeed on a DC 14 strength saving throw or be knocked prone. If the target is prone, the horse can make another attack with its hooves against it as a bonus action. This is a CR 1/2 monster, and it's got this trampling charge ability. So, you know, let's look at the Giant Eagle for a second. Giant Eagle. I guess the Giant Eagle has multi-attack with beak and talons, CR1, and it's got keen sight. I could have sworn it had flyby attack. The Giant Owl has flyby attack. The owl doesn't provoke opportunity attacks when it flies out of an enemy's reach, and it's got keen hearing and sight, and it's only CR 1/4. 1/4 the Giant Owl. So I think the solution here is pretty obvious. I think in order to make the Pegasus more interesting, there are a couple of no-brainer powers to give it trample, give it flyby attack, and it's already going to be much more interesting to run as a monster than it currently is. Now, one of the things we do a deep dive into on the podcast, which you can check out the link up above, is that the 5th edition version of the Pegasus has them be intelligent. And the conceit here is that a Pegasus, rather than being tamed like they are in the myth, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but rather than being tamed like they are in the traditional Greek myth, instead, the Pegasus basically chooses their rider, right? You have to sneak up on them is one thing, but then it's more about making a bond with the animal than it is with the Celestial, than it is with taming it, because this Pegasus is not an animal, it is a Celestial, and it has, average intelligence. So, for me then, obviously you can do that, but I feel like there's nothing in this stat block that suggests that the Pegasus cares about that, or there's nothing here to suggest that kind of supernatural power. In the podcast, I talk about the unicorn as kind of a corollary to the Pegasus, or sort of like a foil almost. The unicorn in 5th edition, I think they do an excellent job with the unicorn. I think the unicorn is a very well-designed monster because you get a sense of not only its power, but its place in the world. The unicorn is CR5. It's got, some various immunities, immunity to like charmed, paralyzed, and poisoned. It's got a charge power, right, like a trample. It's got innate spell casting with things like detect evil and good at will, pass without trace, calm emotions, dispel evil and good. It's got magic resistance. It's got magic weapon. It's got multi-attack, so it can attack one with its hooves and one with its horn. It's a unicorn. The horn has a healing touch power where it magically regains, 2d8 plus 2 hit points, and it removes all diseases and neutralizes all poisons afflicting the target. This thing has a teleport power. The unicorn magically teleports itself up to 3 willing creatures it can see within 5 feet of it, along with any equipment they are wearing or carrying to a location the unicorn is familiar with up to 1 mile away. Right? Then it's got legendary actions. It's got hooves. It's got a shimmering shield power. It just randomly makes a magical field around it that gives it a +2 bonus to AC. It's got like deflector shields. And then it's got a heal self power where it magically regains 2d8 plus 2 hit points, essentially touching itself with the horn. That's a great example of a monster that, it's even got like a full page of lore here. Right? An entire page. It's got lair actions, regional effects, crazy stuff, right? That's a great example of them taking essentially the same concept of a monster. This is a magical horse that's meant to be like a guide or a companion to the heroes, and really blowing it way out. I think the conceit is that, the unicorn, it's a celestial, just like the Pegasus, and then I think the difference here conceptually is that the unicorn is not necessarily meant to accompany the heroes. They might help the heroes in a scene or in an adventure, but they're not going to be like a permanent member of the party in the way that sort of the Pegasus is implied to be, if that makes sense. So I think what we're seeing, the reason the Pegasus is so under-designed, is I think because Wizards is worried about the power imbalance of suddenly adding this monster to the party's arsenal if it can do all of these crazy things, right? But the problem with that is that this is essentially just a fly speed with a name and a hoof attack, right? Like, there's nothing else going on here that even makes me as a player want to get a Pegasus. You know what I'm saying? They don't have anything cool or any special powers. So I think there would be a few things you could do, A, to make them more powerful, and B, to lean into this idea of the Pegasus as a celestial magical being and has sort of celestial magical powers, right? So my suggestion is to give it some ability to kind of test the worthiness of someone who is, proposing to ride on it, right? That it's got some ability to detect whether or not you are pure of heart. Whether your intentions are truly noble. If this is actually a celestial in the D&D sense, it is an inherently good creature that just wants, to further goodness in the world, and is kind of skittish and slow to trust someone. So I like the idea of giving them some kind of a truth detection power. You could do something like Zone of Truth, and then have the Pegasus sort of demand that the character states their intentions. That's interesting. I think what's better than Zone of Truth, though, is a power that I have constantly kind of come back to, a power on a creature called the Planetar, another celestial, basically where the Planetar knows if it hears a lie. And doing something simple like that, like the Pegasus can tell a creature's intentions by looking at it, right? That it can detect whether or not you're pure of heart. You can't lie to a Pegasus. That's kind of what I was thinking. So trample, flyby attack, and then that truth detection power. And I think that on its own would be enough to make the Pegasus sort of alone cool, right? Make it powerful on its own. So kind of hand in hand with that is our next problem. We have 4 problems this week because my wife and I kind of collaborated on these on the episode of the podcast. But there are no mechanics presented here for how to prove your worth to the Pegasus. Because we're kind of losing, we were giving the Pegasus intelligence, which I prefer. It makes it more of a character than just like a beast that you sort of break like a horse, right? But then that implies to me that there have to be some prerequisites, there have to be some, outside limiting factors the Pegasus is putting on a hero, right? In order to make them, in order to sort of prove that they're worthy. But how would you go about doing that, right? You want to have some sense of, you can't just walk up to a Pegasus and make your case. I like the idea that there's almost a trial you have to go through. And maybe it is as simple as kind of the Breath of the Wild, riding on the Pegasus's back and seeing if it can buck you off. Having there be a small trial, probably this isn't a sidebar, probably this isn't in the main stat block, but including this is what you have to do to prove your worth. Not only do you have to kind of pass the Pegasus's test, or it knows your intentions to tell whether you're pure of heart, but then you have to kind of take it for a test ride. And if the Pegasus manages to buck you off, then you're not only, your intentions might be good, but you aren't worthy of the Pegasus's attention. So, it could be a small skill challenge, where the character has to succeed on, 3 checks, have to do an acrobatics check, an athletics check, and an animal handling check. Right, and if you can succeed on all 3 of those, then great, you are worthy of the Pegasus. Just something really simple like that. Right, and then that kind of might unlock future powers, which we'll talk about in just a second. So the third thing, and that's relatively simple. I think we can do that. Even just saying that out loud, I think that's probably how you would mechanize that. Trial of the Pegasus. The third thing is about an item that is referenced in the lore, but is not actually presented, and that is the Golden Bridle. Now, in mythology, the Golden Bridle was given to Bellerophon, I believe, and it's basically the thing that charms the Pegasus into allowing him to ride it. Which, not the best, especially if we're talking about an intelligent creature, but it is a cool part of the mythology, and it seems a shame to just dispense with it. So I would say maybe take the bridle and rework it and say that it doesn't charm the Pegasus. The Pegasus isn't, enslaved by the bridle, but instead, if you are riding on a Pegasus using a golden bridle, it enhances the Pegasus's powers. It gives it new abilities, makes it more in line with the unicorn, so that a Pegasus with a golden bridle is, a higher CR, and it's got a couple cool spell-like abilities, and blah, 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 right? The conceit there being that in order to get the bridle, you have to probably go on some other unrelated quest. So you might start out with the Pegasus, and it's just the Pegasus, and that's great. It's flying around, it's got trample, it's got flyby attack. But if you can get your hands on one of these bridles, that unlocks a whole new suite of abilities that you can activate while riding on your winged mount. And it also gives you this built-in quest. Who has a golden bridle? Do you have to make one? Do you have to go steal it from someone else? How do these golden bridles work? What is their purpose? Blah, 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 right? That could be an interesting adventure in and of itself right there. And if what are we doing here if not providing adventures or trying to come up with like threats and challenges for players to overcome, right? That's like part and parcel of this entire concept. And then lastly, and I'm not sure exactly on the mechanism of this, it might actually be good to tie this into the bridle because I worry that we're already kind of unlocking too many powers. But beyond flight, riding a Pegasus basically gives you no additional powers, right? Like, I'm a big fan of monsters that have kind of conditional sort of mount-based powers, like while riding this beast. There's actually like a handful of monsters in the 5th edition monster manual that could do with this. Like, we have the Pegasus, the Griffin, and the Hippogriff, and the Unicorn, you could argue. And they're all basically the same kind of monster. They're all like flying, you know, intended to be mounted. Like the Hippogriff, I think, more so. God, this makes no sense. The Hippogriff is CR... I didn't even look at the Hippogriff. I didn't even think about this. The Hippogriff is CR1. Okay, it's got much fewer hit points, I guess. But it's got Keen Sight and multi-attack, right? Hitting for definitely more damage between the beak and claws. And it's 1 CR less. Like, why? Ugh, I'm so disappointed with the Pegasus. But basically the idea of, like, saying that these monsters, the Griffin, the Pegasus, the Hippogriff, you know, the Unicorn, maybe even the Hippocampus, if you were to design one of those, are all kind of in the same suite of, like, these are magical, mystical, mythic mounts, right? These are creatures you are intended to ride. And so I like the idea of each one of them coming bundled with some power that is only unlocked while riding it. Like the Pegasus on its own doesn't have this power, but it would only benefit you if you were riding it. And maybe that's tied in with the bridle. That might be kind of simpler, but I like the idea of getting at least one power that's like, okay, this is the Pegasus's thing, right? My thought was, I had 2 ideas for powers here. I think one of them is probably better tied to the bridle, but I like the idea of a Featherfall style effect where, I mean, I think the real function of a Pegasus, right, is to basically like rescue you when you fall. That like, give the Pegasus a reaction where if it's a tuned rider, if it's like, you know, paired rider, bonded rider, falls off of the Pegasus can immediately move its speed and scoop them back up again, right? Call it swoop or whatever. And the point of the Pegasus is that it comes to your rescue, right? I also think you could maybe push that way out and say that, like, even if the Pegasus isn't with you, anytime you fall, the Pegasus teleports next to you and picks you up, right? That it's sort of like a permanent Featherfall spell that's on you. That's pretty powerful, but there's something cool about jumping off of a cliff knowing that you're going to get picked up by the Pegasus, right? I feel like a player could really do some cool stuff with that. Secondly, a little bit more practically, I think you could strengthen the bond by giving them sort of, you know, familiar or animal companion style connectivity, right? So you could say that the Pegasus and the rider have a kind of a telepathic bond. They can sense each other's emotions. You know, they can sense when they're in trouble. Maybe they can see through each other's eyes. That feels a little spookier than you necessarily want to do. And that the Pegasus can communicate ideas telepathically to its rider, right? So it's kind of like the Unicorn. The Unicorn has telepathy, but this would only be specifically associated with somebody who has passed the trial and kind of proved their worth. So I think that's cool. I think there might be a way, we talked about this in the podcast, but there might be a way to harken back to a sort of 4th edition style of artifact design when making the golden bridle, and to say that like the closer your bond is with the Pegasus, the more powers the bridle unlocks, right? Something like that could be cool, I think, to really like supercharge it. So I think then we say that the Pegasus on its own, it gets a couple more powers. It gets trample, flyby attack, and the sort of like Peer of Heart thing. I think it gets a conditional ability where if you're riding it, it has this function. And then it maybe has the bond, the like psychic power thing. And then you say that if you get the bridle, you can unlock maybe 3 additional powers. Or maybe even 2, right? That like, because it's got friendly and helpful. Or, you know, maybe you do a similar thing like a piety, like a loyalty score, where the more you do things that benefit the Pegasus, the more you unlock these powers, and say that's tied into the bridle. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, in addition to the trial you need to go through. So let's go over here to the Pegasus and let's put these powers in that we talked about, and then we can maybe brainstorm some ideas for some additional cool Pegasus powers. So we're gonna hop over to this next window here. This is a website that I like called, it might be a little slow while I pop over, I apologize. This is a site that I use all the time called TetraCube. And TetraCube is great because it does basically all of the heavy lifting of monster design right here, where you can go into the stat block and you can monkey with it, and it will do a lot of the math for you, and it presents it in this very nice, clean stat block. So I really, really like TetraCube. I recommend you check them out. I'm not paid to say this. I just think it's a very cool and useful site. So for the most part, we're going to keep a lot of the Pegasus's sort of core stuff. We're not really going to change too much of it. It's mainly going to be in the abilities that we're going to mess around. So let's put flyby attack. They also, one of the other great things they have is they have this large suite of like pre-generated abilities, right? So if you need flyby, you can go here, use the preset, and say the Pegasus doesn't provoke opportunity attacks when it flies out of an enemy's reach. Yeah, add ability, done. And then you can update the stat block, and there it is. It's great. This stream is not brought to you by TetraCube, just as a reminder. I just like it. I'm also going to put in trample, because I like trample, trampling charge. I've been playing too much Magic if I'm just calling it trample. If the Pegasus moves at least, what did we say? What's the Warhorse? We can just copy it off the Warhorse, right? If the Pegasus moves at least 20 feet, I think, is the Warhorse's power. Straight toward a creature, and then hits it with a hooves attack. Okay, at least 20 feet straight towards a creature, and hits it with a hooves attack on the same turn. Target takes an extra. I mean, yeah, I think we just copy this straight out. Is it just the normal hoof damage? I gotta stop closing this if I'm not actually done with it. That's giant wolf spider. I need Warhorse. Okay, I see. It doesn't take extra damage. The target must succeed on a DC 14 strength saving throw. Yeah, that's fine. Towards a creature. Ah, I see what they do. Towards a creature rather than towards a target. Towards a creature and hits it with a hooves attack on the same turn. The target must succeed on a DC 14 strength saving throw. Oh, are we knocked prone? If the target is prone, the Pegasus can make another hooves attack against it as a bonus action. And that's under abilities. Again, that seems very no-brainer to me. Let's put multi-attack in there, and let's give them a bite. Ooh, sorry about that. Let's put multi-attack in there. Based on their strength. Although, wait, multi-attack. As an action, use preset. The Pegasus makes 2 attacks, one with its hooves, one with its bite, and one with its hooves. I actually never know the grammar of that. Is that a semicolon when you have that kind of a multi-attack thing? It's a colon. One with its bite and one with its hooves. So that's an action, and it goes above hooves, and then we need a bite. Melee, like that. Use preset, call it bite. Its strength to hit. Its reach is 5 feet. 1 target. Let's go 1d8 plus strength. Is it piercing? Yeah, piercing damage. And then add action. Oh, shoot. That's ability. Put it as an action. It still says Bitwa. Bite. So in order to make this this pop up for you guys, I have to have it be kind of small. So I apologize. Oh my gosh. You know, for the amount that I use TetraCube, you think I'd be better at it. Okay, there we go. So that's the really basic stuff. And that already makes that monster a lot more interesting. Right? Way more interesting. But I want to put... Boy. I like calling it like heart sight. The Pegasus knows a creature's, or can detect a creature's intentions simply by looking at them. I like that because it's a little poetic, right? It doesn't get into that kind of third edition nickel and diming thing where, you know, as an action, it considers a creature and it forces them to make the save, and it detects their alignment. No, it's not about alignment. It's just about their intentions, right? Like, you can't hide anything from the Pegasus. It knows what you want. And that's what I think is really great about the Justicar ability, or the planetary ability that I referenced, is that it specifically it just knows if it hears a lie. You know, you don't have to, like, have a whole, like, there's a zone of truth effect. Like, you as the Dungeon Master can interpret that however you'd like. Great. Okay, so then I think, see, the issue is this is already getting to be a chunkier stat block. I like the idea of the bonded rider, right? It feels like another ability. Oop, there's a ambulance. Do you think, boy, I'm trying to decide if the bonded rider thing is all tied into the golden bridle. I kind of think it should be. I kind of think that the golden bridle has all the cool stuff. Maybe it's got the telepathy thing. Let's say that. Let's say pair bond. A Pegasus. Oh, how does the succubus frame the charm thing? Because they've got like a thing where there's no limit to their telepathy or whatever. Incubus. The incubus has a similar, incubus succubus has a similar kind of a thing where once they've charmed somebody, they have a bond with them. H. See, because I like the idea of giving like Pegasus to like a villain. You know, that like it isn't necessarily that a Pegasus is always gonna be correct, and that like the party might find themselves at odds with somebody who is bonded to a Pegasus. Is it really under S for succubus? I kind of assumed it was under I for incubus. Is it succubus incubus? That's very weird. Yeah, succubus incubus. You think it'd be incubus succubus? Telepathic bond. What if it's empathetic bond? Yeah, empathetic bond. Empathetic bond. The Pegasus can sense the emotions of the creature it is bonded to, can communicate telepathically. The Pegasus and its rider and its bonded rider can communicate telepathically as long as both are on the same plane of existence. In addition, they can sense one another's emotions and always know when their partner is in danger. Yeah, again, a little more poetic language, right? Empathetic bond. Yeah, okay. I think that's pretty good for the Pegasus. So So how do we change language then? Because they can communicate telepathically as long as they're on the same plane of existence. And this is once another. Can sense one another. Always know when the other, rather than their partner, when the other is in danger. Okay, cool. So that's the monster. Let's maybe talk about the girdle really quick. Yeah, this maybe isn't as complicated as I thought. So I kind of want to reference 4th edition. I want to look at how they do those, because in 4th edition, their artifacts worked a little differently, where you had to kind of like curry favor with them. Like as you did things that helped, you know, or that further the artifact's agenda, you unlocked more powers. I always liked that design, even though it's a little bit crunchier. 5th edition seems to have gotten rid of that, and just basically for intelligent items, they just say like, yeah, it's intelligent, and it wants this, you better get it, right? So I'm gonna grab my 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide and take a look at that, and then we'll go from there. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. It's astonishing to me how thin of a book the 4th edition DMG was. Like, very thin. It's like maybe 200 pages, if that. Yeah, 220 pages. Very thin. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, Concordance is what it was called. So you had a different score. Skill range from 0, angered, to 20, pleased. When a character takes possession of an artifact, it starts with a Concordance of 5. Various actions and events increase or decrease the score as long as the character possesses the artifact. When the artifact is pleased with its wielder's actions, its concordance goes up. When the wielder acts contrary to the artifact's desires, its concordance decreases. The wielder knows of the factors that alter the concordance. It's in the artifact's best interest to communicate its desires and expectations. Okay. So you would have to figure out like what the bridal wants. Yes, they each have goals. So it's like the acts of the dwarvish lords. Help the dwarves flourish in keeping with their ancient traditions. Give goblins, and especially giants, the deaths they so richly deserve. Ooh, yikes. Become an inspiration to honorable people everywhere. It's got some role-playing notes and stuff. So I feel like these are more like... It's one of the things where I think you would bundle it with the artifact, but I don't think we're talking about the bridal being intelligent. I think we're talking about the Pegasus having these desires, right? Like this is a Pegasus thing, not a bridal thing. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I don't know how I feel about concordance, because I also don't like the idea of like, to me it doesn't make sense that he would have angered, right? Because I feel like the Pegasus could sever the bond at any time. Ooh, is that something we put into the stat block? Yeah, let's go like this. Let's reword empathetic bond just a little bit. The Pegasus can choose to establish an empathetic bond with one humanoid creature that has passed its trial. While bonded, Pegasus and its rider can communicate telepathically so long as both are on the same plane of existence. In addition, they can sense one another's emotions. The Pegasus can end the bond as a bonus action at any time. It chooses that, like, there's this implication that or can choose to end the Pegasus can choose to end the bond as a bonus action. There's this implication that the Pegasus decides, like, if your actions or motivations change, then the Pegasus, you know, like you can, if you turn evil, essentially, right? Like, yeah, I'm into that. Okay. So then for the bridle, I think it's like neutral to, it's like ambivalent to, you know, pleased or whatever. So let's go like 14. Bridle, the golden bridle. Golden bridle. So what we need then are like 3 or 4 cool powers that it grants you. I think it's got like a really basic, like the Pegasus's armor class is improved, right? And you can like share saving throws, you know, that kind of a thing, I think is like the starting one. Let me see what the different concordance levels are. So it's pleased, satisfied, normal. So it's normal, satisfied, pleased. So yeah, I think we can do that. We can say it's 3 levels that, and I think that's simpler, right? We need to think of the Pegasus's goals, right? To like slay evil monsters feels right. To help the innocent. To slay evil monsters. To help the innocent. And I'd like one that's like kind of a horse thing, right? Like to eat good grass or whatever, you know, like something like that. Something that's like a little bit more like baser. I'm not sure what that one is. I can maybe brainstorm that one on my own. To do something horses like. And then you've got 3 powers. And the way I think it works is it's like if you're 0 through 5, like each time you do one of those things, you get +1. Each time you, like the rider performs one of these, you get a +1 bonus to your loyalty. You can only improve your loyalty once per day. At 5 loyalty, like, so then you have like different powers. So like 0 to 5 is neutral. Is neutral, right? And then 5 to 10 is satisfied. Well, what if it's not loyal? If it's like neutral, loyal, and then devoted. 10 to 15 is devoted. Or 10 plus is devoted. Yeah, I like that. Probably you do it the other way around. You go neutral is 0 to 5. Neutral is 0 to 5. And then loyal is 5 to 10. And then devoted is 10 plus. So, okay, so I think the standard benefit is like, while you ride the Pegasus, you can add your proficiency bonus to the Pegasus's armor class. In addition, you and the Pegasus share saving throws, share saving throw proficiencies. It's kind of defensive, right? Like, and then I think this is the feather fall power. Like, when you fall, Pegasus can spend a reaction to move its speed and catch you before you hit the ground. Right? And then devoted is the one I'm not sure about. Like something about the Pegasus being able to like teleport to you is interesting. Like, yeah, getting some like overtly magical ability, I think, is cool. As an action, you can teleport the Pegasus to your location. Ooh, and vice versa. Yeah, as an action, you can teleport into the saddle. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So, we gave them trample, we gave them flyby attack, right, in our version here. They have heart sight, they have the empathetic bond. We gave them multi-attack with a bite. Ooh, let's put the bite above the hooves. There we go. Bite hooves. Yep, that's good. We gave them... We talked about the trial. That I can do pretty easily. That's like a sidebar. With the golden bridle, I need to obviously mechanize it and make it a little cleaner, but yep, there you go. And then beyond flight, the featherfall effect is in there, and we gave them the empathetic bond. Yeah, that's cool. I want to beef this guy up a little bit. I like the notion of it. But I feel like it might need a little bit more juice. Yeah, but that's cool. Okay, well, everybody, I think that brings us to the end of our relatively short stream here today. It was a nice quick one. That is the Pegasus monster stream. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. If you're watching this on VOD, obviously, it looks like I was by myself. But go ahead and check out the podcast if you haven't already. The link is up above me right there. We are currently on hiatus, but we will be back in April with some new episodes. We're tackling the D section of the Monster Manual, and there is a lot. We've got dragons, we've got demons, we've got devils, plus a whole bunch of other monsters like Displacer Beasts and Dragon Turtles and Dark Mantles and things. So that's all coming up in April. But if you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel, hit the bell to get notified, click the like button even. You can find me on Twitter and Discord. All the links are down below in the description. I'm toying with bringing back an old series I used to do on YouTube. We're going to see if that's worth the work. But I always just like to shake things up and make new content, and see what sticks, see what people are into. But thank you so much for watching, everybody. I will be back, I believe, on Sunday night with another world building stream. We would love to see you there if you can make that. That'll be at 6 p.m. PST. So come hang out with us there. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much for watching. And happy adventuring. Thanks for coming.